Relatives and friends, as we begin our services, we ask that you please turn off all cell phones or electronic devices or place them in a silent mode. Thank you.
Today is the 6th of August, a date that would not pass unnoticed by our history buff, Jerry. On this day, as you recall, 1945, the American bomber Enola Gray dropped its bomb over the Japanese city of Hiroshima. As lives were changed that day, so the lives of the family of Gerald Solowey have once more been changed forever. I'm Rabbi Stephen Feinblum, Rabbi Emeritus of Temple Sinai. Bunny and Jerry were devoted and steadfast supporters of our synagogue from the time they came to the area in the 1960s, soon after its founding. Bunny was a constant molder of the bodies and minds of her nursery schoolers. My son Seth was one of the hundreds of students that she gave a lasting foundation to, so they could easily move into kindergarten and into life. Jerry always greeted me with that strong handshake, even after his shoulder problems, a broad smile, and a very sincere, "How's your family? How are you doing?" And I knew that he meant it. He would share how he was doing after Debbie's tragic death. Why do bad things happen to good people was always on his mind. He would keep me updated on Scott and on Miriam and on Doug, briefly. If I wanted details, I went to Bunny. His love and devotion to them and his wonderful Bunny was felt as he spoke of his dear ones. I cherish the time that I spent with Jerry. Tehi nishmato tzror b'tzror ha'chaim. May the soul of Gerald Solowey, Gabriel Leib, Ben Shmuel Vitova be bound up through the memory and the bonds formed with his nearest and dearest. Co-officiating with me today is Rabbi Michael Parise. He is the capable, gracious, and deeply compassionate rabbi of our synagogue. He will continue this service.
Thank you, Rabbi Feinberg. We're going to begin with Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And we all say, Amen. In the Jewish tradition, it's believed that the body and the soul are two distinct entities. That at birth, they come together, and in death, they separate. Now, whether you believe in the literal soul or not, I do. One thing is for certain. The people we love, the people we lose, remain in our hearts forever. Everything Jerry was, all his memories, all his stories, now live on inside of each and every one of you. He will be with you always. And when we say Zikron Nan Levracha, may their memories be for a blessing, that is what we mean. And I know he will be a memory in each one of your lives. There's a little poem I'd like to read today. It's called The Dash. I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of his friend. He referred to the dates on his tombstone from beginning to the end. He noted that first came the date of his birth and spoke of the second with tears. But he said that what mattered most of all was the dash between those years. For that dash represents all the time that he spent alive on earth. And now only those who loved him know what that little line is worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live and love when we are living out that dash. If we could just slow down enough to consider what's true and what is real, and always try to understand the way others people feel, and be less quick to anger and show appreciation more, and love the people in our lives like we've never loved them before. If we treat each other with respect and more often wear a smile, remember that his special dash might only last a short while. So when your eulogy is being read, with your life's actions to rehash, will you be pleased with what there is to say about how you spent your dash? I met Jerry only a few months ago. My wife and I were looking at Bunny and Jerry's house. It wasn't meant to be, but what a blessing that we got to spend that half an hour together just talking and getting to know one another. I know what Jerry means to all of you as a husband, as a father, as a grandfather, and as a brother. He was a special person, and everyone I meet continually tells me he was a special kind of human. May Jerry's blessing always be a blessing. May Jerry's memory always be a blessing in our lives. Thank you.
Thursday night, I spoke to Bunny and Scott and Doug with the skulls in the background. They gave me general information as well as personal inspiration of their husband and father, grandfather, and friend. The New York Times article read, Atlantic City plans growth, 25-year program being formed to make it a super resort. This was in the New York Times and dated February 23rd, 1936. That was the very day that Tilly had her own plan for growth in Atlantic City, as she gave birth to Gerald Lee Gabrielle Labe. After marrying Sam, when Jerry was 6, the family moved to Philadelphia. And let us now fast forward. Jerry graduated West Philly High School and went on to college and then the School of Dentistry, both at Temple University. At the end of his sophomore dental school year, Jerry met Bunny, who was then in the 12th grade after mutual friends passed on her telephone number. Jerry came to the house where her mother was impressed. Bunny convinced Jerry to let her drive his car. You'll have to ask her about that. All in all, their first date must have been successful because Jerry told Bunny that he was going to marry her. And I'm not sure where the first encounter took place, but I do know that 2 years later, they were married on June 14th, Flag Day, 1956. It was the 8th of Sivan on the Hebrew calendar, the day after the Jewish holiday of Shavuot, when the Jewish people received the Torah as their guiding constitution. Keep that word in mind. Jerry was starting his senior year in dental school. Brush your teeth every day to keep the dentist away. During the summer, he needed to earn tuition for the next year, so he drove a Jack and Jill ice cream truck. The following year, he graduated and joined the Air Force as an officer to hone his trade. A dentist gets to the root of the problem. When his service stint concluded, the couple first spent time at her mother's home, and then they settled in Cinnaminson. And Jerry worked for another practice at that time. Over time, he developed his own clientele, and finally, he opened his own dentist office. Bunny recalled that her husband took pleasure in dentistry, but even more, he loved his patients and the rapport he built with them over the decades. Be nice to your dentist. He has fillings too. Jerry loved to travel with his family and Bunny. He flew a plane solo, loved fishing and music, especially jazz. He tried his skill at piano and even banjo, painted model soldiers, and collected coins with Scott. In retirement, his love of history paid off well as he became a docent at the Constitution Center. Many times he led my wife Barbara's classes around that center, making history alive and meaningful. Becoming the parents to Debbie and Scott was a joyous highlight in their lives as a family. Love abounded as they took them from childhood to adolescence and college. And then it happened, as the lyrics of the Hamilton song, "It's Quiet Uptown," states. There are moments that the words don't reach. There is suffering too terrible to name. You hold your child as tight as you can and push away the unimaginable. The moments when you're in so deep, it feels easier to just swim deep. The Hamiltons moved uptown and learned to live with the unimaginable. Debbie's needless death was that such an unimaginable horror for the family. I came a year after that tragedy. Family and friends helped to make it possible for Debbie to sing her song through a stained glass window dedicated to her memory at Temple Sinai. Bunny taught nursery school children, and Jerry worked his wonders to help people. They were working through that unimaginable. It takes so much time and effort and support to learn to live with that unimaginable. Time does heal, but it leaves unimaginable scarring. Bunny and Jerry held on to Scott. Good people held on to them until a semblance of healing could happen for all. Scott married, and then there were the grandchildren. They were thrilled to become grandparents of Miriam and Doug. Scott, Doug, and Miriam were his light. He held on tight and as needed from afar with Bunny. Whatever was best for you. Throughout our life together, as Bunny noted, Jerry was there for me, his family, and steadfast for his friends. He was a good person, a good father, and a devoted grandfather and friend was Gerald Solowey. Let's take this opportunity to hear from those who knew him best. First from Scott, and then from Doug.
behalf of the Solowey family, I wanted to thank all of our friends and relatives for coming today to remember my dad, Gerald Solowey. Jerry was a loving husband, father, father-in-law, grandfather, brother, uncle, friend, and business associate for many of you here today. He loved his family very much and cherished spending time with you all. Dad loved my mom and was married to her for over 62 years. He was so happy when Elaine joined our family, especially so he could share her family's 7 Fishes Christmas tradition. As you're probably aware, I liked it too. He loved his grandchildren and was so looking forward to, as we all were, to my son's marriage in 2 months, to Shannon and become part of the Steiner family who are here today. And just from knowing them for a short time, they are very special people. He had a very close relationship with Doug, and Doug had amazing love and patience with my parents. Doug spent numerous hours helping them out around the house, building things, and providing technical support, and things that a typical millennial would provide to people even my age. He was so proud of his granddaughter Miriam starting medical school at Jefferson this past July, and was so excited to see the pictures of Miriam in her white coat ceremony, medical school convocation. He was an accomplished dentist for over 50 years to all his patients and always tried to help them as best he could. I remember vividly growing up in a house, the home office, so the living room was literally next door to the dental office. So I could hear the drill, and I was thinking to myself, thank God that's not me in that shoe. So, I also remember on Friday nights, we listened to Friday with Frank Sinatra and Sid Mark every Friday on the old stereo. Over the years, my dad had wonderful memories of family trips to Lake George, New York, Israel, Puerto Rico, the American West, and the 30-plus years we spent at our second home in Poconos. He especially loved fishing with my daughter Miriam and playing golf with my son, and despite the long walks in the woods, and we hit our tee shots there. My son and I are very, very sorry for uttering a few choice words on the golf course and disturbing the neighbors' Sunday breakfast. He also loved flying and his frequent trips to Costco and BJ's, mostly to shop and eat the food samples. Like most Philadelphia fans, he endured endless heartbreak over the Philadelphia sports teams. But I'll never forget the joy in his, Doug's, and my eyes when the Eagles finally won the Super Bowl. For me, I almost missed his advice to me during challenging times and in my life, both personally and professionally. But most of all, I would just miss him being around and the memories we both had. I love you, and I will miss you, Dad.
Just a quick correction, my tee shots weren't that bad.
Better than mine, of course.
I'd like to thank Rabbi Feinblum and Rabbi Paris for leading us today and celebrating the life of my grandfather. I'd like to also thank all of you for coming today from both near and far, and those of you joining us remotely, if that's still happening. Over the past several days, I've had the opportunity to talk with many of you, and what struck me the most is the significant impact that my grandfather had on so many people's lives. He was truly a larger-than-life figure. And at his core, his family and friends were paramount. His love for his wife of 62 years was unparalleled. He would walk to hell and back for my grandmother if it meant she would never have to suffer. As long as Bunny was all right, he was all right. He was a dedicated parent. He supported my father through anything and everything. He was restless when my father was uneasy or unwell, and he would never stop trying to help, even if it meant sacrificing his own well-being. His dedication to preserving the memory of his daughter, Debbie, never wavered. And I like to think that now, after so many years, they are reunited once again. His friends were more than that. They were also family. Even though they weren't connected by blood, his friends and their happiness meant just as much to him. He was blessed with a supportive group of lifelong friends, and I'd like to thank you all for being so close to him and my grandmother all these years. It means a tremendous amount to me, and I can only imagine how much it meant to him. To me, he was more than just a grandfather. We were truly, in his words, old buddies, and we were each other's confidants. I could go to him with any problem that I had, and he would always know exactly what to say every time. He was my biggest cheerleader, regardless of how small an accomplishment was achieved. He would celebrate promotions before there were promotions. He even loved and supported my fiancée Shannon as if she was his own granddaughter. He had a tremendous sense of humor, one that would even get him in trouble from time to time, as I'm sure most of you are aware. He was always strongly independent and determined. No matter how hard we tried, he would never let any of us do anything for him. Most of all, he was adventurous and curious. An anecdote that sticks out to me, back in late 2014, he was 78. He told me about a new Broadway play that he got tickets for and he dragged all of his friends to. And he said, get this, it's a play about Alexander Hamilton, but it's in rap. And he always tried to be on the cutting edge, and more often than not, he succeeded. Despite reaching, as he would say, at the end of the road, this really isn't the end. Many of us here today have at least one distinct memory of Gerald Solowey making our lives better. Whether it was a helping hand, a joke, or even a heart-to-heart conversation, whether he displayed his classic character traits like toughness, determination, perseverance, I know that he had a profound effect on many people in this room. And my belief is that as long as we commit to remembering those moments and preserving those qualities that he possessed, there will never be an end of the road for him. Thank you.
Thank you for those loving and personal insights that helped to round out your dad and your grandfather at this time as we give him kavod, as we give him honor on this day. Let me conclude with this anonymous poetic summary of the life of a man such as was Gerald Solowey. It kind of balances with the poem that began this portion of the eulogy. Not how did he die, but how did he live? Not what did he gain, but what did he give? These are the units to measure the worth of a man as a man, regardless of birth. Not what was his station, but had he a heart? And how did he play his God-given part? Was he ever ready with a word of good cheer to bring back a smile, to banish a tear? Not what was his shrine, nor what was his creed, but had he befriended those who were in need? Not what did the sketch in the newspaper say, but how many were sorry that he passed away. And let us say, Amen. Please rise. El Malei Rachamim Shokein Bamromim Hametzei Menucha Nechona Al Kanfei HaShekhinah במעלות קדושים וטהרים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמת גבריאל בן שמואל וטובה, שהלך לעולמו. בגן עדן תהיה מנוחתו, אנא ברחמים יצדירהו בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר אמן.
Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Gerald Solowey, who has entered now eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence, and let his soul be bound up in everlasting life. God is his inheritance now. May he rest in peace, and let us all say, Amen. You may be seated. On behalf of the Solowey family, we thank each one of you for coming here today. We will be following this chapel service at Roosevelt Memorial Park for the graveside. Donations in Jerry's honor can be made to the memory of Deborah Solowey, to the Debbie Solowey Memorial Fund at Temple Sinai, or to Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, www.maad.com. Family and friends are invited back to Bunny's after the graveside at 22423 Shannondale. You might want to get that information again. Autobahn, PA 19405. We thank you all for coming today from the bottoms of our hearts. We are with you, and we send our condolences. Thank you.
Do we have the pallbearers, please? Oh, excuse me. I'm going to ask if everyone could please rise. Ladies and gentlemen, if you can take a seat, I'm just going to dismiss everyone row by row. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your patience. Thank you very much for your patience, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, he was a good one. He was.
Are you in the procession? No, you can stay if you're not in the procession, but if you're in the procession, I'm going to ask you to get your cars. Okay, then you can stay if you like. Don't worry about it. Are you in line in the procession? Then no, you're not allowed.
No, we still
As long as your car does not have a funeral sticker on it, like as long as your car is not in line to go to the cemetery, all right. Yes. Yes.